and welcome to another episode of Laying Down the Lore 40k, a lore podcast in which we aim to separate our Drukhari from our Dark Angels, our Tyranids from our Tau, and our Craft Worlds from our Chaos Marines, and generally ask, what's up with this Warhammer 40k stuff? My name is Ben Crumbarber, and I know pretty much fuck all about 40k. With me is my co-host, Christopher Crallin Allen.
Hello, Benny.
Who knows absolutely fuck all about 40k.
Yes, Benny.
And my dear brother, Darren.
Speak up, Ben.
Who knows so much about 40k, it's a wonder he has time to do anything else. Over the years, this dichotomy between our levels of understanding became clear, and this series is an attempt to address that ignorance.
Sorry, did you just say over the time this dichotomy between our understanding became clear? Who's Claire?
Became clear, yeah. She's the patron saint of our ignorance.
40k.
There was a lot of use of my name in that intro. Are we going to have another repeat of this whole Shut Up Ben thing?
No.
Well, now you said it.
No.
Yeah.
No.
What are you saying?
Just putting some honey in my tea.
Shut up, Ben. No. No.
Also, it is coffee, so shut up, Ben.
Is that you putting honey in your tea? Is that euphemism for putting genetic material in someone?
That's right, you Genestealer.
Yeah, you can't see what's going on below my waist right now, but it's real Genestealer.
There's ridges.
I can tell you that.
There are some ridges.
Ridges for extra pleasure.
Shut up, Ben.
Right. Before we move on with this shit show, thank you to everyone who supports the show. You guys are wicked. If you want to support the show, you can click on the Patreon link in the description, and you can sign up today for as little as £3. £3! What could you get for £3, Skral?
You could probably maybe afford to be infected by a Genestealer. I don't know. Their rates have gone up a little bit.
Is that a cost?
Yeah. There's a bit of a tax there, isn't there? You know.
But then, you're probably better and safer, let's be honest, in the long run, spending that money on a Discord.
On a Discord thing. Join our cult instead of the Genestealer cult. Yeah.
Exactly.
Our cult is way better. Come and join the fun that is our Discord chat and lots of cool people, not including me.
It's way safer, and there is way more sex involved.
No.
Shut up, Ben.
No. Shut up, Ben.
Shit. Sorry,
shut up, Ben.
wrong Discord.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's my personal Discord. If you do want to support the show, but you don't fancy a subscription, we get it. It hurts that you feel that way, but we get it. And there's a ton of other ways that you can support the show. So if you just click on the support us link in the description, you can find all our affiliates and support platforms.
Basically, there's no excuse. There is no excuse not to support us.
Right.
Shut up, listeners.
Right, Crowley, you know what time it is.
Citizen of the Imperium, it's time for frontal lobotomy or bottle in front of me.
Hey! Right. I mean, I was going to ask you what we cover in the next episode, but I think you've already demonstrated that you remembered.
I know. I have memory. What do you think about that?
Okay.
Did you say next episode as well? Did you say remember what you did in the next episode, or is that just?
Did I say next episode?
Comms?
I meant
you
last.
did,
yeah. That's just weird. That's just
jerk.
Time dilation. Where am I today? The clue really is in the first question. What is a Genestealer?
It is a stealing gene humanoid thing. It's an alien, right? Top part of the Tyranid umbrella. Wants to just take over shit. That's all it does. Just wants to reproduce and survive over and over again. I mean, how much more do you want me to go into it?
No, that is enough.
Looks like a bruised testicle.
What are the colours?
Blue and purple, baby.
Blue and bruised.
Bruised genitalia. TM.
Like when a Tyranid army arrives, are the Genestealers like foot troops, or is there a different type of Tyranid? that occupy that role?
No, we'll cover that at the close out of this episode. But in general, when a Genestealer is within range of the hive mind, it becomes just the kind of shock troop. Genestealer.
Okay.
Its need for survival, that drive disappears.
Okay, cool. All right.
Do I get any points for that?
You can have a point. You can have a point.
Yay.
I don't know what it goes towards, but we'll figure that out later on. How many generations does it take for the offspring to return to the original form?
5.
Oh, just what's going
Decisive,
on?
Non-hesitation. I know, right?
Are you on lion's mane or something? There's some sort of increase in cranial activity going on.
Yeah.
Wait,
man. Yeah.
have you been ovipostured?
Are you interested?
Fine. I think you've got some oviposter on your lip there, mate.
Sorry.
Yeah, you got some bruised testicle on your lip there.
How weirded out would a Genestealer be if the guy that he's just about to impregnate, let's say, just start sucking on his tongue?
Yeah, would the Genestealer be put off if the man was really into it? Like, oh my god, you're not going to enjoy it.
It's like anxious attachment. He's like, oh, whoa, yeah, no, that's too much. You're not my type.
And the guy after is like, call me. And the Genestealer's like, yeah.
He's like, you're now part of my hive mind. So I don't need to call you. We're on 24/7 contacts, bitch.
Much to my regret.
You are really triggering my anxious attachment, anxious avoidance crap right now. Right,
yeah,
Carl,
has there only been any Genestealer regret, Darren, where you like infect someone, you're like, oh man, that was a mistake.
A regret cult.
They're very needy.
I don't think so, but I think it would make an amazing sitcom. A kind of Married with Children vibe, you know? Al Bundy.
Right, Crow, final question. I think you've got this one. What is a Space Hulk?
It is an abomination of abandoned craft and meteors and planetoids that have all kind of coalesced into one big hulking thing, if you will, and it kind of travels mindlessly through the warp and sometimes comes in and out of corporeal space as well. Often populated by either orcs or Genestealers, but always
dressed as Superman.
Fabulous. Does that answer it thoroughly enough?
Yeah, man. You're again that lion's mane.
Space Hulk. Yeah.
It's working, isn't it? Do you want to? So that was 100%. Do you want to know what your overall percentage is since Inquisitor Randall McDangle started this? What do you think?
Quizzy Randall.
Give me
I'm going to say 65%.
What the fuck, Krell? It's 65.38%. That is mental. Oh my god. Give me some of whatever the fuck it is that you're on. I feel like it could be something.
So what's the threshold? What do I...
90.
At which point do I get lobotomized? I have to get 90 or above to avoid being lobotomized.
So let me just put this into perspective, right? So last episode you got 100%. You were at 60% total. So you got 100% this episode. That's brought you up to 65. Just to put that into perspective. So obviously, if you could keep nailing it at that, you would stand a good chance of getting up to 90.
Right. Okay. We need to do more back-to-back recordings, and doesn't it?
Yeah. I need to make Randall needs to make the questions a little bit tougher. I think.
I was going to say, and how many of these more blah 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 words? How many more of these?
We don't know.
We got.
Randall just
right. So I could get to 89%, and then coincidentally, your time's up.
Exactly. And then
give us your brain,
and then it resets. Yeah. So
and then we do it all again and again and again and again and again and again and again, like something else, right, Darren?
Waves after waves of my own questions.
Exactly.
Right. Well, where are we going? What's the crack?
Genestealers.
keen-eared listeners
I'm totally on board with the Genestealers. I really like them. I don't know why. They're creepy and weird and ridgy, but like, yeah, I just think
and ribbed.
But nonetheless.
So what I thought I'd do in this second half of the Genestealer expose is kind of run through the various generations and the kind of troops and capacity that a cult would have in its early days versus in the kind of ready for a global uprising kind of phase. So we touched last episode on the process by which a Genestealer takes over both an individual and a planet. And so when the Genestealer manages to begin the kind of infection phase where they effectively gain pure human cultists around them, all of which who have had the Genestealer's kiss and thus have this drive to reproduce. The very first generation we discussed was more Genestealer than human, but not pure Genestealer. And both the first and second generation come to be known as acolytes. And these are the initial kind of inner circle of the patriarch of the cult. And so you have these kind of monstrous beings, slightly, well, they would be as tall as humans, but they're kind of hunched over. And so they're seen as slightly shorter than humans and viewed very easily as mutants within the various types of industrial world or hive world that kind of dominate the Imperium. That forms the core of the military forces, or the militant forces, I should say, of a Genestealer cult. And they're very much a kind of paramilitary terrorist-style organization at that stage. They'll push to dominate an area so they can get a kind of home base set up. And as I said, they kind of wipe out the various kind of low-level to mid-level criminals around them so that law enforcement of any stripe, be it the kind of planetary governor's law enforcement or the Imperium, the RBTs of the Imperium, have no reason to come looking, as there's no complaints coming out of that area. So what you find is no news is good news. Exactly right. So what you find is that the bulk of the cult at this stage will be the brood-minded humans, and who will protect their children, which are the first and second generations, with their lives, and who view them as these kind of angelic children of the star children, which we'll cover towards the end. This is the core of the cult, but we do have some other aspects that come in. An ad hoc type of life form enters into a cult, and in fact, it enters into most cults, which is referred to as an aberrant. And these are kind of steroided out early hybrids. So they look heavily mutated. Frequently, they've got either 4 or 3 arms. They'll have 2 legs, but sometimes they'll be mutated so that one of the legs has 2 feet. Sometimes one of the arms has 2 forearms and hands on them. And they're really bulky. They're somewhere between...
Ridges for days.
Yeah, ridges for days. So they're somewhere between... the size of a human and the size of an ogren. So they occupy a kind of 7 to 8 feet tall, hulking mass. And they're used initially to help clear out the lower levels of whatever area they're trying to take over. And they're held in reserve as kind of both miners for digging out the kind of bedrock so they can create the kind of cultists' home base, but also as shock troops when they're trying to wipe out any competition nearby. But they race in, destroy everything, and come back out.
Why are they so pumped? Are they like muscular pumped, or just like one keg?
They're muscular pumped in terms of their size. No one exactly knows why. It's not detailed out in the lore, whether it is some kind of mutation within the parent, the human parent, when the genetic material went into their body, it kind of augmented some mutation that was inherent within the human, and thus that was passed on to the child. But as I say, these are the shock troops of the cult, the early and indeed later days, and some of them are trained a little bit to become the kind of tunnel hunting assassins of the cults so they're sent out to kill specific individuals to allow the cult to grow.
Maybe some sort of Genestealer protein shake. With all
it could be. It could be just
Huel,
pure
Tyrannid Huel.
Huel and calisthenics, great combination, great upper body and core strength.
I imagine there's one kind of mutant who just focuses purely on leg day. And so it's this tiny torso Genestealer with huge legs as it kind of pumps through the various tunnels to wipe out
basically.
Yeah.
And we will include a photo of Kral's calves in the show notes.
Why would we do that to people? These hybrids are so large that in terms of weapons they use two-handed weapons in a single hand. So and usually it's mining equipment. So it's huge picks, huge hammers for breaking up rocks. And indeed, some of them are on the tabletop are sculpted holding the poles from signposts torn from the ground with huge clumps of rock at the other end.
Oh, cool.
And so they're used to just really get in there and crump everything. If that's a word, crumping, who knows?
Yeah. You've been crumped.
They can be led by what's referred to as abominant hybrids, and these are aberrant-sized hybrids that are deliberately created by the Patriarch, by the founding Genestealer. And what that Genestealer does is use their brood mind psychic ability to manifest, to create a mind worm familiar. So they summon the raw forces of the warp through this brood mind psychic capacity that they have and create a tiny little Genestealer about 1.5 feet tall.
That is adorable.
And they send that out to one of the stronger aberrants, one of these hulking mutants, or hulking mutated Genestealer hybrids, and that familiar latches onto the aberrant, and the Patriarch then pushes through kind of psychic genetic warping information that hulks out the aberrant in question to be this huge version of these shock troops. And these then either lead the shock troops or used as kind of destructive assassins against their enemies. All the while controlled, like dominated completely through this familiar, which is still separate from them, but it stays within their kind of immediate area so that the Patriarch can take control of it psychically at a moment's notice.
So it's not like I don't know if you've ever seen those like Blue Planet episodes of the deep, and there's like two fish. I think it's a male and a female of the same species, and when they mate, the male attaches on to the female and basically provides it with sperm, and in turn the female provides it with sustenance, but it fuses together. It actually becomes one entity. So you say that this isn't that, it's a separate entity, but it does latch on.
Entity,
when it's pumping in the psychic DNA information, does it actually have to be on it as like in contact with it? Or can it just
I was using a very strong phrase there, latching on. I think it has to be in the immediate vicinity. It could have to latch on, but it just needs to be in the immediate vicinity of that.
Could just be sat on its shoulder, whispering things to it, like go destroy that.
Yeah, grow bigger.
On the miniature for it, it is actually sculpted on the same base, so it is it's within arm's reach.
Excellent. Without the familiar, this thing is just part of the bigger hive mind posse.
The brood mind posse,
but when the Patriarch wants to, like, no, I need some direct control. I need to be able
muscle.
to him to Yeah, exactly. More control than just kind of overall broodishness in this. I need some specific duties being done.
Yes, but that can simply be a series of psychic instructions but the Patriarch can also completely take over the mind of the aberrant so that it can, or rather the abominant, so that it can carry out.
And it does it through this little foot-high familiar.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And so is the foot-high familiar linked to the broodmind, or is the foot-high familiar completely independent but fully loaded with the information that's needed?
It's effectively a walking psychic beacon that is the creation of the Patriarch. So it's its own entity.
It's the Bluetooth adapter.
Exactly right. Yes.
Got it. Yeah. Got it. Yeah.
It's the wireless headphone of the Genestealer constructs. So at this stage, in the kind of up to the second generation, you have a significant amount of humans, probably more than half the cult is humans, under this mass hypnosis, under the brood mind. You have the kind of the horrific angel children, who are the first and second generation hybrids, and you have these aberrants, and then they're psychically pumped up Arnold Schwarzenegger ints, who, carry out the will of the Patriarch on a kind of ad hoc, as needed basis. But it's really through the human members of the cult that they begin to take over. We'll use mining as an example, a mining concern for a section of an imperial world. And with that, they gain access to a lot of material. So they gain access to primarily a vehicle called the Goliath, which is this huge mining truck. So there's two kind of versions of it. There's the kind of Goliath truck, which is effectively somewhere between an SUV and an articulated lorry. It's a single large vehicle that can be used to transport miners, to the faces of the various mines that they're operating in, but also to carry out ore on large kind of trolleys
and really popular with yummy mummies in upper class suburban areas that don't really need a vehicle that size
for school
around.
Runs.
Yeah. Pop them down to the cult kind of educational system. We're just going to drop
before they go for their brunch. Yeah.
Don't forget your familiar.
The other version the other version of this Goliath truck is referred to as the Goliath rock grinder. So this has a huge kind of many-toothed chainsaw drill kind of bandsaw plow at the front of it, and
multi-tool.
And then it's usually got a huge kind of multi-melta cannon, a thermal cannon, as a kind of main weapon in quotes. But it's what these do is they're at the front of a mine, a mining operation, and these literally melt the rocks. And as the rocks cool, they're chewed up by the kind of plow at the front, and thus. Or the bulldozer kind of side, and thus the mine is dug, faster than it would be in this normal, or faster than it would be in our own world.
Would it be faster? You just said the process was they melt the shit out of the rock, wait for it to be cooled so it can be digested by the bulldozer.
Yeah, but that's still got
to begin with.
Surely that's significantly faster than getting a bunch of humans to do.
Than just drilling, yeah. You're using a kind of nuclear fusion microwave cannon. So one assumes that there will be a lot of melted stuff, but a lot of stuff just explodes and then needs just to be...
Sounds like health and safety have had nothing to do with that process.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So those are the two kind of big, heavy pieces of mining equipment. There are significantly larger ones. There's a kind of drill that they can use to create tunnels incredibly quickly, but it's very costly, and they have to get to a certain size to be able to kind of either requisition or take over an existing drill head. Most commonly then, what they do at this early stage, we're still at second generation, is they will begin to scout out locations where they can either spread to or for their initial or for their eventual kind of home sanctum for the cult. And so they have access to these kind of four-wheel drive cars, effectively referred to as the Achilles Ridge Runners. And these are, these look like what's called the technicals of various paramilitary forces, which is just basically, what do they call them in America?
Pickup truck.
A pickup
with
truck
a gun on the back.
With exactly right. With a heavy stubber or a mining laser mounted on the back of this vehicle. And so these range out across the planet's surface looking for good areas to expand into, or as kind of scouting patrols to make sure that their operations are still unseen. In later generations then, as we move into the third and fourth, this is where the kind of critical mass starts to come into effect. In terms of their vehicles, the mining operation then, as its kind of participants begin to appear more human, are more frequently seen and can move relatively easily through the mass of humanity. So this is where you start getting bike squads going out on patrol and scouting. So you get what's called the Atalan Jackals. That's the name of the unit. But these are, a squad of 4 to 10 Genestealer hybrids on dirt bikes as they go on patrol or scout out or whatever it is the cult needs them to do. And they're joined when they need a bit more of a kind of heavy punch. They have what's called the Wolf Quad, which is a quad bike. Usually, again, that has a kind of heavy weapon mounted on it that allows them to have a bigger punch. Mr. Chris?
These are third, fourth Genestealer generations that are getting more and more humanoid-like.
Yes.
Apart from obviously being fanatical and having the Tyranid/Genestealer agenda at the forefront of what they want to do. Other than that, are they pretty regular human like behavior? Bants, sarcasm, humor, emotions, and things like that, or are they quite like a bit weird? Do you know what I mean? Are they socially awkward? Could you identify them that way just by them being very not?
Would they stand out in a kind of friends dinner party?
No, not really.
Aside from the physicality.
The physicality really is the kind of thing that would trigger it. But again, if you're on a world where there's a heavy kind of mutant population as well, it can you kind of be explained away. You still have to face the inherent prejudice of the Imperium against mutants. But you wouldn't be seen as the kind of alien horror that you actually represent.
Right.
In terms of their behavior, it's a great point. I think when they're in the cult, it's very, very structured. And there's some form of pheromone kind of communication. There's some form of telepathy that all generations can engage in. So it's, silent-ish and muted more really than anything else.
So
but very heavily structured.
A dinner party then.
No. But in terms of interacting with others, it's really up to the fourth generation hybrids to do that. And they can be as gregarious as anyone else because they're trying to either inveigle their way into positions of power and authority or influence, or get that person they're talking to come behind the bike shed with them so that they can be ovipostered and brood-minded.
They can really blend in like at that party.
Yeah.
God,
absolutely.
Those hors d'oeuvres left a lot to be desired. do you want to pop round the back of this bike shed here? Maybe? I don't know why we're having dinner near a bike shed.
So once these third and fourth generation hybrids start to appear in the battlefield, you see them grouped together in what's called neophyte hybrid squads. So these are like the mining crews that you would see as they go into work, or a patrol squad. These are the ones that you would not really take a second glance at as they kind of went through their day-to-day life if they're kind of traveling through basic humanity. They're also the squads they're also the hybrids that would naturally fit together in a neophyte hybrid squad on the tabletop. They're the ones that look humanish versus the acolyte squads, which are the ones that look, they really don't look humanish. One of the most common style of troop squad that you find within a Genestealer cult. I don't know why I paused there. That's weird.
So acolytes are first and second, and then neophytes are third and fourth.
Third and fourth.
Right.
Now, once you get into the third and fourth generation, this is, as I say, where you hit that critical mass, and that's where you start getting a lot of specialist cult members come into existence, either through training or by design. One of the first is usually a thing called a Kellermorph. And this being is used as a kind of a hero symbol to the cultists in their fight against the oppression of the Imperium. So they're like a folk hero kind of status. And they're really sort of like a three-armed Clint Eastwood in his cowboy movies.
Dirty Harry.
So the figure for them is quite good. It's a three-armed gunslinger with a kind of a bandana around its face. And so this specialist...
outlaw.
Yeah, this hybrid appears vibes. Where the greatest friction is between the Genestealer cult and the kind of local law enforcement or other kind of corporate body that's trying to encroach on its mining capacity. And so these beings will lead a revolt of acolyte squads, usually the first and second generation, sometimes third and fourth because they're still heroic figures, but they'll help in the domination of the nearby institutions or settlements or mining opportunities so that the cult can grow into it. So they're held up as this revolutionary figure. In terms of other specialists, there's you've got somewhere between 4 to 6 other kind of really elite style individuals, and they are individuals, they're not squads. Around the third generation, you get something called the Locus, which is locust, but without a T. And that's a bodyguard. It's a bodyguard figure, not only for the Patriarch, but for any kind of envoy that the Genestealer cult is going to send out when it, wants to negotiate with rival gangs or with some institution of the Imperium. And these are really kind of, for want of a better word, assassins, although assassins are another separate being. These are masters of kind of twin-bladed, dual-wielding combat, but they also have a very long, segmented tail, much like the tail that the alien xenomorph has in the movies, which it uses to obviously kill and eviscerate the nearby if they come into contact with their enemy. Charge. Yeah. So at this stage, then, you can see that the cult is not only starting to kind of push that revolutionary theme, but also defending itself very aggressively in terms of, its diplomatic relations.
Where's the Patriarch at this point?
The Patriarch is usually
miles away.
Yeah, usually held up in a grotesque abattoir style inner sanctum, where it's fed the traitors or the obstacles to the cult. They're usually thrown into the pit with the Patriarch. But that's not to say that this grotesque kind of abattoir style area is not also hugely opulent with luxurious decorations and furnishings and stuff.
Decorations, yeah.
As the cult grows in influence, it grows in opulence.
Right. Okay.
And,
what's Genestealer opulence?
Mascara.
Yeah. There's the kind of mix of them. It's a biomass of L'Oreal and Broodles.
Yeah.
Looks gross, smells fucking great.
As this kind of expansion towards critical mass is happening, the kind of dirt bike riding squads, the kind of scouts and patrols are headed up by what's referred to as a Jackal Alphas, which is an assassin biker, usually armed with a sniper rifle. So these guys will join the Jackal bike squads, head out into wherever they need to go, and snipe away at a vital element of their enemy's infrastructure.
While on the bike?
While on the bike, yeah.
Jesus.
To be fair, the miniature is sculpted as if it is kind of... It's got its foot on the ground, so it's not whizzing through the air or whizzing over the land to...
Drive, park, shoot... it's like what's that Olympic sport where they cross-country ski,
repeat,
and then they shoot, and then that sort of jam. But genestealery.
Go on, they call it now. It's not cross ski, is it? It's actually got a
cross-country.
What's the name?
Cross-country ski and shoot.
Yeah, they have their guns, and they get like 5 shots at each target, don't they?
That's
and then
right.
Ski on.
It's called a biathlon. Biathlon. Yeah, it's biathlon.
Sounds Genestealer to me.
Yeah,
it's cross-country skiing and rifle shooting. What a great combination! A classic,
exactly.
Like strawberries and cream. Yeah. Whenever I go skiing, I always get to the bottom. I'm like, do you know what? That was a great run, but I kind of feel like it could have really done with some shooting halfway down the mountain. You know? just take a machine gun up with me next time and hose as I go down.
Our next event will be the biathlon that combines knitting and UFC.
Progene Pro Protein Plus is a premium performance protein product used by pro miners Rob Ripper Swarmsky, Russell Buggy Termagant, and Carlos I'm Definitely Not an Alien Stanton. Progene Pro Protein Plus is from the makers of Mega Massive Mondo Muscle Meat, Wang Four's #1 selling bodybuilding supplement brand. Elite miners do everything it takes to reach the top, and part of that is oviposturing people. Taking the right protein to build a size and strength needed to compete with the best in the world. Progene Pro Protein Plus isn't your average protein formula. It's scientifically formulated with core muscle building ingredients to help maximize delicious biomass gains. Here's the lead researcher from the team behind Progene Pro Protein Plus. His team were the first in mining nutrition history to ever conduct research on a scientifically advanced core formula, and the results were astounding. The core ingredients of Progene Pro Protein Plus are scientifically shown to be 4% better than regular protein 3% of the time. Subjects built 4% more biomass with the core ingredients of Progene Pro Protein Plus than subjects using regular protein alone. Awarded the prestigious Wang Masters of Licking Stuff gold medal for superior taste, this delicious tasting formula is also packed with the core scientifically tested ingredients that we definitely haven't mentioned several times already that you need to take your biomass gains to the next level, all while being guaranteed to be packed with various banned substances, gluten, and carcinogenic gribblies, all made on Terra. If you want to take your performance to the next level, reach for the brand chosen by the best miners in the world at a price nobody can afford. Pick up a bottle today. Progene Pro Protein Plus. Premium supplements, alien free.
So we're in the midst of this vast expansionist phase of the Genestealer cult, where we're now getting into the 4th generation. So we still have that solid core of the acolytes and their human parents with the aberrants, these kind of hulking monsters. That's really sort of the inner circle of the cult. You then get into the 3rd and 4th generations, where you've got this. They first start kind of creating these heroic figures and bodyguards and assassins to get rid of the kind of the nearby opposition, either through diplomacy or through assassination, and that's where you start seeing the cult really kind of grow to be, go from a kind of a local to a national threat. Right. And it's then this 4th generation where you see it become a real global threat to a given imperial world through 2 main kind of aspects. The first is the cult itself develops a significant number of other specialists, and we'll just run through some of them here. In terms of assassination, you get what's called a sanctus, and this is a Genestealer John Wick. Is how to think of them.
Nice.
And they're deadly both at range and up close and personal, and these are augmented via the Patriarch through what's referred to as a soul sight familiar. Again, another mini Genestealer that gives them huge bonuses to accuracy, allows them to ignore cover. It's this kind of that gives them insight and kind of far-reaching accuracy with their sniper rifles.
Cool.
Buffs them to shit.
Exactly right. That's where you start seeing more significant opponents of the cult as it's growing just disappear completely. Either they're found dead or they're just gone. And usually they're just gone because, if a body is found, there's going to be investigation. If an opponent disappears, there could be any kind of number of reasons for that, and it's not instantly assumed it's the cult.
And also, that's delicious Patriarch food. You're not going to let that go to waste.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, man, there's like 70 kilos worth of protein right there.
Yeah, bam.
You're not just going to fucking leave it.
This Tyranid Huel program isn't going to fuel itself, bitch.
You were asking how those abominations get so hench and juiced.
Yeah, there you go.
That's it.
Just insert a dead person in them.
That's shut up, Ed.
Well, I'm not going to shout segue. Well, maybe I will. Segue. So another specialist that you find at this stage is called the biophagist, and that's a cross between a medical kind of eugenics researcher and a medicae, a healer. And so these will be the kind of primary vehicle for the mass production of these large abominants, together with the kind of battlefield healer role that they'll have. So you'll suddenly see a huge surge in the strength and capacity of the kind of shock troops of the cult. And that's primarily done through the auspices of the biophagist. You're now seeing a cult that can not only take out individuals, but also take out, gang level size or corporate level size gangs within the Imperium, and a capacity to generate more shock troops and to heal itself. On top of that, then you get what's called a Clamavus, which is a great name. And old Clammy,
pretty biological.
What they are is they are the propagandists of the cult. This is where they start taking on
the Goebbels.
So it's the ones that very much mimic the kind of imperial power, the ones that are exclaiming the kind of the divine manifest destiny of humanity, but for the cult. So you start getting not only the cult becomes more kind of morally strong in terms of the rightness of its actions and the standing up to the oppression of the Imperium, but they also begin to sway non-members of the brood, so non-infected, as it were. Mr. Ben.
What was the during the heresy when the Crusade brought a planet into compliance? There was a member of the Imperium that would go and PR the fuck out of it. What were they called?
Yeah, the iterators.
So is that their equivalent then?
That is their equivalent. That's exactly right.
Okay. That's cool.
Disclaimer,
I don't know what I just said and don't understand any of the words that just came out of my mouth.
So they're not only just the kind of propagandists of the cult, they're also the kind of info war specialists. So they're the ones that will disrupt communication of imperial authority, but also corrupt, for instance, the printed word of the Imperium. So they give an example where in the Imperial Guard, each guardsman is issued a booklet called the Uplifting Primer. And what that is a, how to behave and how to operate on the battlefront. So what the Klamavis will do...
Battlefield etiquette.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
So Juan never shoots and stabs.
So what...
Juan must always stab and shoot.
Yeah. And always have your yogurt spoon above your dessert spoon on the battlefield.
And so what they'll do is they'll, edit, give it a judicious editing, and then swap it out if they have the influence within the organization that prints these things on a given planet. And so they can kind of seed in doubts and seed in things like, if you see a 4-armed thing, that's an avatar of the Emperor. Please kill everything that tries to kill it. That kind of right, that's a very slapdash example, but you see what I mean?
It's quite straight up and down, that example. I like it. Yeah, easy to follow.
So they're able to undermine the kind of confidence and rightness of the Imperium's military might on a small unit to regimental size scale, I suppose.
Right. Okay.
While this is happening on many of the Imperial worlds, and especially many that have a military garrison, either the Planetary Defence Force or members of the Imperial Guard, or the Astra Militarum as it is now called, you'll find that the cult begins to infiltrate the military. So they'll either send in, several hundred or several thousand of the 4th generation into... as part of a recruiting drive from the various military entities. And what you'll find is the officers suddenly have hundreds, if not thousands, of incredibly obedient troops who will do whatever the officers say because they want to ingratiate themselves into the military structure.
Latrine cleaning, anything. They don't even moan about it. Right. Yeah, I'll clean up shit.
And within a few decades, you end up with officers who are either part of the broodmind through the ovipostering, or who are in fact 4th generation hybrids who have been recruited in as part of that. Because if you get a lot of really well-disciplined troops coming from one area, you might want to draw an officer or two from that same area to keep kind of unit cohesion going.
Nice.
As the Imperial Guard would think. And so thus you end up with entire companies, if not regiments, of really well drilled, really well trained military troops who are all part of the cult, but they never talk about it because they're still they're in a dangerous position.
Just a knowing look occasionally.
Yeah, the occasional win. Lots of bandanas. Yeah, keep the forehead going.
Yeah, they all have one. They have a ring. If you see that ring, then you know.
So it not only gives the cult, access to suddenly a huge number of their hybrids, a huge number of their neophytes are incredibly well trained and drilled to the Imperium standard, but they also have access to all the military equipment. So they have access to the heavy weapons that would be used in support of such regiments, from like the heavy bolter all the way up to artillery vehicles. They have access to the Sentinel scout vehicles, which is the kind of chicken walker of the kind of smaller end of the Imperium, like the ATST from.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi,
like the Eldari War Walkers.
Yes, exactly right. It's that. Right, it's the human version of that.
But kind of, they're a lot smaller than ATSTs then, are they?
They are, yes. Yeah, right. It's a one-person walker rather than two-person. But these then are armed with significant heavy weapons like las cannons, missile launchers, in some cases plasma cannons, that kind of idea. Mr. Chris?
The Genestealers seem very focused on the infecting, corrupting the human Imperium side of things. Are they interested in... Can they infect Tau, Orc, Eldari?
They certainly attempt it, and in general, they're abject failures. When they go out, they've tried with the Eldari. the issue with Eldari is that they have a very
Eldari liked it.
Yeah,
we're not into this.
they have
that was not the response we were expecting.
They have a very long gestation cycle, so getting to 4th generation could take 1,200 years, and that's not really anything to.
Yeah.
They do it, but it's invariably the opportunities for them to be caught and killed are very high. And so there's never really been a huge kind of insertion into Eldari.
Orcs are just too mindless, I guess.
No,
just like...
there were, in fact, I think it was just one. There was an Orc Genestealer hybrid miniature. So you can actually have Genestealer hybrids with orcs. And because of the capacity for chaos to be involved in these cults, you can have chaos orc Genestealer hybrids. Yes, those exist.
That's wow. Where do you even start? So many conflicts going on.
The biggest problem there is you have the kind of psycho-social overmind of the orcs at odds with the brood mind of the Genestealers.
Yeah.
So they're constantly in an identity crisis.
That's mad.
Yeah, when you've got two primal, instinctual instincts acting, which one is the dominant one?
Exactly.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
With humans are easily swayed.
Yeah.
With propaganda.
With me and you,
it's
aren't definitely
they seem
me.
like the easy target. What do you mean?
Well,
sorry,
you and me, like two primal, mindless drones put together. I'm pretty much...
Get over yourself, mate. That's an insult to drones.
So while there are instances where Genestealers can infect orcs, they attempt it with Tau, they attempt it with the Eldari. It's the humans is where the bang for the buck is, and in terms of the war game, it's all based on kind of human template, because that's the one that gives them access to all the miniatures and kind of weapons and stuff. Speaking of weapons, as we go back to the Brood Brothers, as they're known, these are the ones that are inducted into...
The Brood Bros.
Brood Bros. They're the ones that are inducted into the Astra Militarum. So we talked briefly there, they have access to heavy weapons and to the light vehicles. They also have access to APCs, the Chimera Armored Personnel Carrier, which is effectively just an armored personnel carrier with a huge multi-laser on the top, a laser machine gun.
Multi-laser.
They also have access to the kind of heavier end of vehicles like tanks. You're welcome. They have access to the the various chassis types of the Lehman Russ tank. So they are able to operate at a regiment level supported by armored vehicle. They're a force to be reckoned with. They would go...
Lehman tank.
Lehman Russ
which
tanks,
is the tank famously with no bottom.
No, that's the Rogel Dorn tank. The Lehman Russ tank, has a bottom. Yes.
Okay.
It's very It's very modest. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I made mention earlier on of the kind of large vehicle, the Goliath, the rock grinder, I think. So they still have access to all of those kind of mining, kind of civilian style vehicles up to the heavy end. And I made mention of a drill that they can access, which is called a tectonic frag drill, which is, it's a huge... Well, basically, it's a massive missile with a drill on the nose of it that fires into the ground, and it's used to kind of open up significant space so that they can have access to veins of ores and, get in their mining stuff. But the cult can use it to start earthquakes, and so they can destroy entire settlements, that are coincidentally built on fault lines, that kind of idea.
So does it drill in and then explode? Is that the idea?
It can do. It can be packed with explosives. But
I thought you said it was a missile.
Yeah, well, no, I said it looked like a missile with a huge drill on the nose of it.
Right.
And it drills into the ground. It's usually used for, as I say, opening up fault lines to allow, mining equipment and or mining operations to
begin,
continue and spread and what have you.
What do they do with the mining resources? Do they use those resources to make weapons and stuff, or do they sell them? Is it a proper, is it?
It's a proper mining kind of corporatized
concern.
idea. Yes, right. So they will, because they need to hide as much as possible. They want to be seen as legitimate, so it will be a legitimate mining company.
They pay their taxes.
Exactly right. Yes, because they don't. They are the most honest of the dishonest factions within 40k because they don't want to be investigated.
Right.
Doesn't that in itself, the fact that they're so squeaky clean, like raise eyebrows in certain circles?
And that's how observant inquisitors catch them out.
Right.
If it's saying, well, these guys aren't corrupt, as everyone else is corrupt. What the hell's going on here?
Yeah. They must be the most corruptest.
Corruptiest.
So when the kind of takeover of the on-planet military concern is underway or near completion, you get these kind of final forms of hybrid come into existence. The first is a thing called a Nexus, Nexos, and that is a military strategist. This is one that is kind of trained or has genetic memory of how to run wars, how to run battles, how to use the best of their equipment and troops to the best of effect against the enemies.
Ben, this is your well-spoken general. We're here. The Imperium are here.
The enemy is over there. Go wherever he goes, he's got a laser pen. Yeah. Just everywhere he goes.
Yeah.
and one of these Nexus individuals has access to the entire memory of the brood mind. So they are able to very quickly grasp the entire situation on the planet, who's who they need to kill, and in what order, and where the best place to put the troops and units to carry that out is.
Very cool.
So this then brings the Genestealer cult to the kind of precipice of global domination, of the uprising, to take over the planet, or at the very least cast it into constant civil war for, tens, if not hundreds of years. Mr. Chris?
You've got 4 generations to make this happen. Does it always work out?
No.
Does it sometimes happen sooner than they planned? Does it sometimes not happen at all? I mean, 4 generations is quite a long time, but it's still a very specific time window before that 5th generation comes out and the game's up kind of thing.
Well, I mean, what I suppose, yes, you're absolutely correct. What I should have caveated that with is, if the conditions are right, these things happen. These hybrids appear. Right. So they could be up to 10 generations in. So you'll see the cycle start again and repeat itself twice before the conditions are right with that. And so you will have a huge cadre of 3rd and 4th generations from the 1st and 2nd cycles. And so you will have...
Which is only going to be beneficial.
Yes. So the longer they have, the more of them there are. And thus, if they've acted correctly within their kind of idea of rebelling against an oppressive government, they'll have people in positions of power, up to and including the imperial governor if they're lucky, or having to resort to open warfare. And if that happens, they've won. And so what they'll do is they'll use that planet as a springboard to go off and spread the pure strain gene stealers of the 5th or 10th generation out into the universe to take over nearby systems.
Wow.
With the support and acknowledgement of the kind of legitimate government, in quotes, of the original planet.
So unless you do a kind of Custodes-style scorched earth policy, it's fucking inevitable that they're going to take over. They'll just keep going until...
It'll keep repeating unless you're able to kill all of the hybrids and the pure strain gene stealers. Yeah. Wow. And all of the humans that were infected. That's the other key issue. You have to remember, fully half of the cult is going to be humans who are simply infected with the genetic material of the Genestealers.
Yikes.
It sounds like you given enough time, they could subtly take over a planet, without really lifting a military finger, if you like. And before you know it, like even non-Genestealer related citizens will just, with enough propaganda and enough conditioning, kind of culturally and socially, they end up working or serving in some form the Genestealer cults. And they're completely unawares of it.
I mean, the population of a planet of the Imperium is already so conditioned into the hierarchy that if you capture the top of the hierarchy, you don't need to condition them. They're already conditioned. You can just say, we're going to be doing this. Don't look at this. Keep your head down. Do your job. That kind of idea.
Sure.
The real issue is the kind of federal forces, in quotes, of the Imperium. So the Arbites.
People are wise to it.
Yeah. The representatives of the Mechanicus, that kind of thing, and Terra in general. So anyone who has off-world influence needs to be either taken out or converted as quickly as possible, because those are the ones, when broadcasting the kind of state of the planet, that data can be harvested and analysed, and the Inquisition can go, oi, oi, what's happening here?
Would the Inquisition, if they found that the cult had kind of spread too far, would they do that exterminatus thing?
If it spread too far, yes, they would be left with no choice.
Yikes.
Can Genestealers infect Inquisitors?
Yes, because Inquisitors, by and large, they can be ovipostered. I would be very surprised if any of them can be hypnotized.
Converted.
Yes, because they're so mentally strong. You'd have to be, if you were able to sign the death warrant to 1 billion souls or more,
Okay.
So once the military strategist is in place and the cult has got to the point of critical mass and they're ready to take over, there's two real kind of key figures come onto the scene. The first is the Genestealer Cults Primus, and these are the war leaders. These are the generals of the Genestealer Cult, and they only emerge from hiding when the cult is ready to openly act, to openly rebel and take over the planet or challenge the planet's ruling bodies. These in terms of the tabletop, they are kind of third generation hybrids, so they have 3 arms, or they are sculpted to have 3 arms, but they have what's referred to as a bone sword, which is a Tyranid style weapon, and they also have a needle pistol for just assassination, for poisoning. So a 1-kill weapon if it can get past your armor. And these are the ones that really lead the charge against the enemies. So they're the focal point. They're the ones that strategist would hand all the information to, and then that Primus would be able to enact the kind of plan and take over, or attempt to take over. The other crucial hybrid that comes into existence is referred to as the Magus. Now, a Magus is only able to be created in the 4th generation if one of its parents was a psyker. Or had the capacity to be a psyker. So it then becomes a secondary focal point in the brood mind and has access to all of the abilities, all the psychic abilities that the Genestealer patriarch has. And so they are seen as incredibly hypnotic beings because they are incredibly hypnotic beings. And they are used as almost like the high priests of the cults, again, held up by the bodyguards and the propagandists of the cults that have already existed for, at least a generation. And they are able to take command of any unit that the patriarch would take command of. So looking at the abominant, the huge hulking, genetically enhanced assassins of the cult. And these are, if there are more than 1 or 2 of them, are able to act as the kind of, as I say, the high priests and the diplomats. They're the ultimate diplomat of a Genestealer cult. And indeed, as a cult spreads across multiple systems, there's a sort of rivalry that happens between the Magus, the Magi.
Maguses.
The Magi.
Yeah. So there's a constant kind of jockeying for position in terms of their acts of villainy or their successful recruitments or, destruction, whatever it is they're tasked with doing. But that, of course, that rivalry ends the moment that the cult is ready to act openly. That's a very brief rundown of all of the kind of stages and specialists that the Genestealer cult has at its command through its process of growth. So it not only develops its own kind of distinct identity as a cult, but it also infects not only other institutions, but the military as well. And so
that's fucking cool.
When it comes time to declare war, it's done with enormous precision and coordination. And what frequently will happen is they use ambush tactics where they just come up from below. So that's where you start seeing the rock grinder vehicles with the thermal cannons. They'll just microwave their way into the central plaza of of a hive or a settlement, a crucial settlement, and all of these acolytes and neophytes will race out and take over and kill as many people as they can to take over the various institutions. All the while, you have the Brood brothers with their military expertise and military equipment will lay siege to the kind of the Imperium-centric institutions on a given planet. And what they're trying to do is get to the astropath and the governor's palace as quickly as possible so they can stop the astropath from sending out, a mayday, a psychic
signal.
mayday through the warp. And that's really is a kind of how that Genestealer cult ultimately manifests. It attempts to knock out any form of exterior communication on the planet while it erodes away any resistance within the planet itself.
How far off are because this is the point where the Patriarch has turned into a beacon, right?
It starts becoming into a beacon, yes. Yeah.
So how far off then would the Tyranid fleet be?
It would need to be within a couple of 100 light years to be able to pick up on the signal.
Right. Okay.
And that's a kind of crucial point that we'll talk about now. Oftentimes, when a cult rises up, it does so on its own kind of inertia. It doesn't do that with any kind of overwhelming plan other than survival and take over the planet they're on.
Right, okay. So it gets to a critical mass and they're like, guys, we can't hold this back anymore. We're going to get found out. Let's...
I've just got a spaff man there. Oh my God.
Guys, I am really close right now. Let's get it out.
There are instances where a Genestealer cult's kind of uprising is triggered by the proximity of a hive fleet. And that's where the kind of true, void beast horror of the cult is laid open. When a cult is triggered by the proximity of a hive fleet, one of the first things you tend to see is the acolyte hybrids. A portion, most or if not all of them, turn into something called a hybrid metamorph. And that's where the Tyranid genetic material that's within each Genestealer and within each hybrid becomes dominant. So you start seeing acolyte hybrids eschew any form of handheld weapon in favor of, or rather, because their hands have warped into the natural bioweapons of Tyranids. So you get the various types of kind of biological flamethrowers and swords, whips, and kind of their version of pistols.
Cool.
But these hybrids are completely under the control of the Tyranid fleet via the Patriarch. And what happens is the Patriarch returns sort of semi to that, the kind of psychological state, the imperative of being a Genestealer as part of a Tyranid fleet rather than being part of or rather than being an individual fighting for survival. This cult then will, fight in earnest to be able to not only save itself, but to get the planet ready for the kind of ascension to the Star Children. And the Star Children is this kind of mythic idea of what the Tyranids are that the Genestealer kind of rams into the brood mind so they don't understand what exactly is about to happen. So when the Genestealer cult has almost taken over the planet, or indeed has taken over the planet, and the Tyranid fleet is arriving, and it's clear that the planet is ready to be kind of souped up, hoovered, a sort of horrific realization and treachery waves through the brood mind, as all of the pure strain Genestealers and all of the Acolyte, the first and second generation hybrids, devolve into the kind of constituent beasts that they are of the Tyranid fleet. And so they turn on the later hybrids who don't understand what's happening, because at their moment of ascension, when the Star Children have arrived, their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents suddenly turn on them and kill them. And they're treated as no different to the Tyranids as any other living being on the planet itself. So ultimately, the Genestealer cults are a tool of the Tyranid fleets, and are consumed along with every other life form, including perhaps the Genestealer and the Patriarch eventually, when they have to all walk into the digestion pools, so their biomass is pulled back up into the Tyranid fleet so they can generate new life forms. Yeah. In terms of all of this on the tabletop, all of the units we've discussed can be fielded, and indeed you can represent a Genestealer cult that has some brood brothers, some military assets in it, from the various kind of from the Astra Militarum kind of infected or corrupted units. And indeed you can include aspects of the Tyranid army in a Genestealer's cult, and indeed some of the Genestealer's cult in a Tyranid army, to represent these kind of lost souls as they ascend to kind of, Campbell's soup heaven.
The Genestealers are part of the Tyranid umbrella of race,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you going to, just kind of two separate questions, are you going to talk about Tyranids separately?
That's next month.
Yeah, brilliant. Lovely. Okay, cool. And is there one singular leader of either the Genestealers and or the Tyranids? Like there is the Emperor. He is the head honcho of the Imperium of Man. Is there Mr. or Mrs. Tyranid?
We will discuss this probably at length during the Tyranid episodes, but no, there's no individual named character leader of the Hive fleets in terms of like the Supremo. They do have Tyranid life forms or biomorphs that have been given names, but these are creations of necessity. So, in a given tactical situation, you'll see this kind of leader-style Tyranid appear, but they're as disposable as any other life form within the Tyranid force.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So anyway, yes, that's Genestealer cults. Thoughts?
Love them.
Dark.
Love them. I think
So
I
dark.
was thinking like why I like them so much. I think it's because up until now, everything's been brute force, military, highly organized. These are like the disruptors.
Yes,
the
absolutely.
Big disruptors, and you're never quite sure who, what, why, or when these guys are going to pop out. Potentially the most devastating of what we've discussed so far in terms of Eldari and Space Marines and these guys.
Didn't you describe them as the big bad, Dar? Didn't you? I think we had a conversation in which we asked you what happens.
Yeah.
What's the conclusion of 40k? What happens? You said the Tyranids fucking eat everything.
I think I think ultimately the Tyranids will eat everything except the Necrons. The Necrons are inorganic, and they've lasted millions, if not billions, of years, and will continue to do so long after everything else has been consumed by the Tyranids.
Mad.
Be quite an interesting outcome if Necrons and Tyranids learn to live in maybe not harmony, but side by side. They're just like, look, Tyranids, we're only interested in like organic mass. You ain't organic. You're not a threat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not a power grab. It's not a land grab. It's just...
There'll be factions with benefits,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It may even be some sort of, star-crossed lover, Romeo and Juliet style situation going on.
I mean,
let's not get into the details of that because it'll be gross.
I did put together a small Genestealer force, Genestealer cult force, a chaos coven of Genestealers.
Nice.
God, what was it? In 1990? 89, 90? So I do have quite an affinity with them. Yeah, I think they're certainly an existential nightmare.
Yes,
both for the Imperium, for the people of any given planet, and ultimately for themselves as well, because they are bringing about their own demise one way or another.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever I hear about these, it's the same thing when I watch the Aliens films. My brain is constantly going like, okay, well, what's the solution here? How do we get rid of these fucking things?
Yeah.
And it always comes up against a brick wall. It's like there's no foolproof plan. There's no way of cleaning a planet entirely. So just kill yourself.
When we cover these guys in a bit more detail, which it's surprising that there's more detail than this, we'll look at some of the kind of the major cults, the ones that are spread over significant numbers of star systems, cults that are focused on, shoring up and uplifting the poor and the downtrodden of the Imperium, the ones that have infected the Adeptus Mechanicus, the ones that use religion more than anything else to infect Imperial worlds. It's a smorgasbord of existential terror and dread. Yeah. Merry Christmas.
And on that joyous note, right, let's wrap up. All right, that's all from us. Thank you so much for listening. Details and imagery for the topics we've discussed in this podcast can be found on our website at layingdownthelord.com. We also have all our previous episodes on there, release schedules, and merchandise. And again, if you want to support the show, just click on the supporters link in the description and give us all of your Genestealer credits. I'm not sure where I was going with that one. Anyway,
we'll roll with it.
We'll be back again displaying just how much Chris wants to apparently now be a Genestealer cult. Until then, goodbye.
Ta-ra. Tyranid ta-ra.
Tyranid ta-ra. Go with the blessings of the four-armed emperor.
You really have schizophrenic sign-outs, don't you? I don't know if you're gonna offend people or.
I really want to keep up the really offensive ones. But
I do as well. It's a great sign-off.
Well, in that case, fuck off.